check the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Yeah, I'm using my phone, so I can't do it.
Hey guys, let's gather around. You want to gather around? All right, for those of you that are here, thank you for being here. Those that are watching, I think we've got a stream going out on LPNN's Twitter. Excuse me, X, Twitter, X.
Twitter.
Probably some other strange platforms I've never heard of. 53 years old, I lost count. For those of you that don't know me, I'm TC. I'm humbled, honored to take part in this. I don't deserve to even carry the shoes and the socks of most of the people that are speaking today. Especially those who are vets that have been there. Defend the Guard is a vitally important life-saving measure that it shouldn't have taken this long to make happen. Go back to 1903 to, I want to say it was the Dick Amendment in 1903 that took some of the militia away from the states and said we can federalize it to send your young men, and then let's be honest, at that time it was the young men only, your young men to combat, as long as there's a declaration. We lost the plot. The United States has not declared an actual war since the end of World War II. And that predates even Bob. So, by a little bit. The problem with the reality that since the end of World War II there has never been an actual declaration of war is not that that means we've been a world at peace, because we haven't. The United States in particular has been a nation of warfare since the end of World War II. And I'm not, for those of you that don't know me, you hear these words, you're going, man, this guy sounds like some sort of like patchouli baby, sandal wearing, flowers in the barrels of gun waving kind of guy. That's not who I am. I was born and raised red-blooded patriot. My dad tried to enlist in the United States military during the Vietnam War, and they rejected him because a trigger finger on his right hand got cut off when he was 2 years old. They would probably take you if you had no hand at this point. My uncle, both of my uncles on my dad's side served in Vietnam, one in the Navy, one as a forward observer for 2 tours in Vietnam. And if you know anything about the Army's forward observers, to be able to do 2 tours, let alone make it through your first 15 minutes, is astounding. So I have a history of being pro-military. Oh, and guess what, by the way? I served. 82nd Airborne Division. Bob and I were actually, unbeknownst to each other at the time, at Fort Bragg, and yes, I insist on calling it Fort Bragg. Holy cow. We were there at about the same time. I saw people that I worked with die while we were at peace. Because our country's never been at peace, not once since the end of World War II. I want you to think about that. Those of you that were not, those of you that might be markedly younger than me, I was born in 1970. So anybody born, say from 1980 on, can you name a time in your memory where the United States has not had troops deployed overseas in another country tasked with killing the boys of another nation? And where are we now?
Expanded efforts.
I told people when Ukraine kicked off, when the Russian-Ukrainian conflict kicked off, I I told people, there are going to be American troops on the ground there before you know about it. And what did the Intercept find out for us? The Intercept came back and said, oh, hey, surprise! Special forces are there in an advisory capacity only. And as one of our special forces veterans will tell us, there's no such thing as an advisory capacity only for special operations, especially for the Green Beret. Oh, what else have we found out? What do you know? There are American troops on the ground in Israel right now. Oh, and we just sent a ship, a naval ship full of American Army personnel to go build a port to supply humanitarian aid in Gaza, which is great. We should be supplying humanitarian aid. The problem is we're also supplying the money and the armament that's being used on the Palestinian people. Are you mad yet? And if you're not, why not? But an event like today with Defend the Guard, I wish I could not drop the water bottle. I wish that I could communicate to the people of Minnesota how important this is. And I reached out to a newspaper reporter friend of mine, and they said, hey, there's an event, because he's now covering the Capitol. The stuff that's going on here, I don't know how the man ever gets a bit of sleep. He said, you should come check this out. And he said, well, what is it? I told him, he went and looked at the website, and he goes, I'm going to paraphrase him, he didn't use these exact words. He says, I'm blown away. It's almost all Republicans. You know why? It's because the Republicans are known for being pro-military, pro-war, right? Like, I was there, folks. I was one of them for the longest time. But of all our list of speakers, today we have Republicans, we have like actual libertarians. I want to say registered, but I'm afraid if I say registered in this building, they'll actually make a registry. So, there are libertarians, there are the Constitutional Republic Party individuals here. This is a multi-partisan effort, but you know who we couldn't find to speak?
Democrats. DFL.
So if there's somebody who's DFL would like to speak in favor of this today, I guarantee you I could find somebody who's on the speaking list that would give up time. So if you see like some member of the DFL walking around, grab them. Well, don't grab them. You will end up on a registry. See if you can find somebody. Because this should be a multi-partisan. There should be no question that every single party, every single political movement in the United States right now, especially in the state of Minnesota, should be behind this. If you love your family members that serve, if you served yourself, you should be behind this. This rotunda should be packed. We've been pushing this out for weeks. This rotunda should be packed. But you know what? It's March Madness. Basketball is more important than our soldiers, and our sailors, and our airmen, and our Marines. Political agendas in the halls of this temple to the God of the state are more important than keeping our National Guard troops home. Now, fortunately for you guys, I told Rebecca, Madam Chair, I told Rebecca that I was going to try and keep my comments short, and she said, well, a few of our people will be able to be here to speak right away, so fill all the time you want. So I did bring, I'm a burgeoning stand-up comic, so I'm going to go through, I'm kidding.
So good.
Do it anyway.
Do it anyways. No, I actually happened to be in contact with the guys from BringOurTroopsHome.us, which is also DefendTheGuard.us, and McKnight, Hunter Rensis, and Diego Rivera. And Dan, who is kind of the, I don't want to say he's in charge because we all know that Hunter runs the show for him. But Dan's kind of the driving force. He's one of the ones that really got this going. And Dan is a combat vet. He has served with distinction over the last 20-some years. I don't know if it was 20, but he served for quite a while. I believe he's a Marine Corps vet and Army vet. Don't ask me how that works. No one knows how to pick on him. That's what that comes down to. But Dan wrote a statement specifically for the event today. So if you would bear with me, I'm not good at reading other people's comments, and almost everything I do is extemporaneous. But so it's not just me talking, I'm just going to fill time with Dan's statement. And this is going to, I know you guys are going to appreciate this. The great anti-war Minnesota statesman Eugene McCarthy said, "The death of democracy is not likely to be an assassination from ambush. It will be a slow extinction from apathy, indifference, and undernourishment." I'm grateful that TC asked me to submit a statement to read today. I will be in Minnesota in a few weeks speaking at the LPMN State Convention. I wish I could be with you today. This, the Defend the Guard rally, is my passion and life's mission. Defend the Guard is the most critical state-based legislation and activist movement in America today. For that matter, it is the most important for tomorrow, next year, and for decades in the future. Reaffirming the enumerated powers in the Constitution which rests the authority to declare war with Congress and not the President, restricts the executive branch and the unelected bureaucrats from sending the Minnesota National Guard to fight wars of choice around the globe unless Congress has first declared war. The executive branch is most interested in war and most prone to it. War powers today, however, do not reflect that wisdom. Congressional abdication has eroded the Constitution's checks and balances. Presidents have started and continued wars without authority for the past 82 years. For those of you that are watching at home or in your cars, not that you're watching in your cars, but that are listening in, 82 years. Defend the Guard. Using the individual state's lever of influence, the 10th Amendment removes nearly 50% of the Department of Defense's total force structure and only allows it to return to the battle space if Congress reclaims its authority and declares war. Although Defend the Guard is plain and clear and it mirrors the indisputable language in our founding document, passage among several states faces heavy resistance from the Empire and the Congressional Military-Industrial Complex. Activism coupled with pressure from the grassroots is necessary to force change. Real activism with proven results and multiplied by allied organizations working in concert is the only lever that we the people have to compel the states to flex their authority to interpose between an out-of-control federal government and their own National Guard. Death of democracy will be a slow extinction from apathy, indifference, and undernourishment. Is meant to wake you up. At the height of the empire, Socrates called the Athenian state a giant lazy horse and argued that he was a gadfly constantly stinging them in the ass and forcing them into action. McCarthy's prediction about the death of democracy should be stinging you in the ass like Socrates' gadfly. McCarthy's words serve as a cautionary reminder about the importance of active citizen engagement in a functioning democratic society, emphasizing the need for constant nourishment, both in terms of civic education and participation. McCarthy calls on individuals to remain vigilant and committed to safeguarding the principles that underpin democracy. His warning resonates with the idea that democracy can only thrive when its citizens are passionate, informed, and actively involved in the political process. Being here today at a rally to support Defend the Guard legislation in your state is where you should be to fill your cup with camaraderie from active grassroots citizens hell-bent on saving the Republic. But nothing will be accomplished at this rally to move the legislation forward. Nothing. Activism requires active participation. The grassroots activism associated with the Defend the Guard movement in every state where this legislation is being incubated includes phone banking, petition, signature gathering, door knocking during election season, testifying at legislative hearings, referencing and publishing regular content, writing to your elected representatives, and joining your efforts with the efforts of others. And I'm going to add here as an aside. It doesn't matter whether or not they have an R, a D, an L, or a C behind their name. You find the person that you can align yourself with on this issue, and you carry water with them. And if you can't do that, you might as well stay home. Our activism with Defend the Guard is led by Diego Rivera, who has orchestrated dozens of influential laser-focused battles every year. And Diego does not like to lose. I will give you a straightforward call to action, one that you can do right now. Go to www.defendtheguard.us and click on the Minnesota map. Click the link to sign the petition. Each petition signature will be delivered to the Minnesota legislature at the appropriate time when Defend the Guard is presented. Share the petition among your sphere of influence. Rinse, repeat, and multiply by posting your effort on social media and pushing the petition in any relevant arena that you can. Finally, go to www.defendtheguard.us/phonebank and sign up to be included in the next phone banking effort. We have an army of phone bankers that flood state capitol buildings and apply appropriate pressure to elected representatives. The phone banking team has built an amazing bond and kinship that is moving mountains. 15 minutes at a time, a day or two a week during the legislative season is more activism than 99% of all the members of every political party will do in their entire lifetime. McCarthy's warning was a clarion call to act. I'm giving you the simplest and most effective activism tools imaginable. Join Diego, and together we will restrain the war machine, and we will defend the Guard. Experiment to bring our troops home down the West. So, Rebecca, I think I killed enough time to open things up a little bit. So we're going to bring Charlie. I'm just trying to. It looks like this says Carly Ruckles. I can't read Rebecca's handwriting, so Charlie's flipped it.
Thank you very much. My name is Charlie Koopmans. Thank TC for the warm introduction, and thank you all for coming out today. This is such an important issue that our state is facing right now. As TC said, he mentioned that he doesn't have doesn't want the shoes to carry the water. I'm not sure how you phrased it, but I'm going to tell you something from a veteran who hasn't been there. I can't speak to the veterans who have been there because that's not my experience. I'm a former chair of the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. I am a veteran. I served from 98 to 2003 in the United States Navy as a hospital foreman. And most of my time was spent over in Okinawa with the Fleet Marine Force. And when I say my experience is not that I was over there, it's because I got out about less than 2 weeks before a stop loss for Fleet Marine Force Corpsman was implemented by the Department of Defense. And for the longest time, I regretted that decision. I was looking at my friends being deployed overseas and in combat, and the things that they were witnessing and hearing from their families, just the atrocities that were experienced over there. And I felt the guilt of not re-enlisting. And now looking back, I'm happy I made that decision because I didn't want that to be my experience. My ex-wife was also active duty, and we had an 8-month-old baby. And I made the decision to not re-enlist. And I'm happy I did that. What I fear is that the way that our state legislature is approaching the Minnesota National Guard is not looking at them as members of our community, as our brothers, our sisters, our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors. And I hesitate to, foreshadow what they're thinking in deploying our Minnesota National Guard overseas. We need to bring back at least some restraints on the abilities of our governor to be able to relinquish Minnesota National Guard members without a declaration of war. Keep them domestic. Lord knows we have so many domestic problems happening on our soil that we need our Minnesota National Guard members here, present, and not overseas. So I know we have some time, and I'm not the greatest speaker in the world, so I didn't want to take up too much of it. But at the same time, I plead for the state legislature to take up this issue, to understand the impact on our lives, on our friends' lives, on their families, that these deployments are going to take. And really start to think about the repercussions when these service members come back. So I want to thank you for inviting me to speak today. I appreciate the opportunity, and let's keep this movement going, and let's keep fighting to defend our government. Thank you.
Pat Murray, she's next, by the way. A little bit of my story actually kind of reflects Charlie's. Charlie got out right as Somalia kicked out.
Yeah, April 1st of 2003. So April Fool's Day.
Not going to touch that. Don't open doors for me, Charlie. I joined during the first Gulf War because I was out at the University of Montana, and the University of Montana had taken on a reputation. They started to call it the Berkeley of the Rockies. There were literally people burning American flags and urinating on American flags on the college campus and at the federal courthouse and the county courthouse in Missoula, Montana. And I said, the right answer to this is go to war. And so I had this problem with college. I didn't know how to study. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that problem. I made it through junior high and high school in the subjects I liked with A's and B's, no problem. And the ones I didn't like, I just whatever. And then I got to college, and the subjects I liked required studying, and I didn't know what to do. So I joined the Army. Probably no more Marine jokes today, TC, no more. And so I'm in basic. I want you to picture this. Basic training. You signed up to go fight a war in another country. Not defend your own country. Well, we were defending, I don't know what we were defending our country from, but we were going to defend our country by going to Iraq and defend Kuwait and Saudi Arabia from Iraq. And I was literally halfway through basic training. And if you know anything about drill sergeants, well, back in the day, I don't know about drill sergeants today, I don't think they're the same at all, but if you know anything about drill sergeants back in the day, they weren't known for their tenderness. So in the middle of the night, they woke us up. We got good news and we got bad news, soldiers. And I'm like, oh boy, we're going to get smoked. Well, the good news is the war's over. The bad news is we still own your ass. And there I sat. The whole reason that I joined really wasn't for the college money. It was because I thought it was the patriotic thing to do, was to go join, because the country's going to war, and all of these bunny-hugging, tree-loving hippies out here in Missoula were all wrong. And I was going to show them. Boy, I showed them all right. They finished college. I jumped out of airplanes for a living. One of them was cheaper than the other, but didn't benefit me nearly as much. So I finished my time. But in that time, we went to Somalia, and we lost. others. We lost special operations aviation regiment pilots. For what? Why? And who was backfilling, and by the way, who was backfilling at that time still in Iraq? The reason we're here today, National Guard. They were backfilling. Back then, they were backfilling. Oh, and I guess what, then when we were done with Somalia, we hadn't had enough. We were going to go restore democracy in Haiti. I just want you to think about that for a minute. We are going to restore democracy to a country that's never known democracy by bringing them democracy at the point of a gun and a bunch of pissed off paratroopers who just wanted to go home. I was sitting in the barracks waiting. The invasion was supposed to be underway, and we sent Colin Powell and Jimmy Carter to Raul Cedras' palace in Haiti and said, hey, we got this picture here for you. Have you heard of the 82nd Airborne Division? Yeah, they're on their way. So your choice is, we can call them off and you get on a plane and we'll fly you out of here. Or they can come here and when they get here, they're going to kill you. Yay, democracy. He got on the plane and made the right decision. But that was, Bob, what year was that? I can't even remember off the top of my head. Was it 95? That was 95. What just happened in Haiti? Same thing all over again. Not because our military is bad. Don't hear this. Military is not bad. Like literally, if you're ever going to hear me make an argument for they're doing their job, like you bring people into the military, you teach them how to kill and break things. That's what the military does. You kill and you break things. And then the engineers come in afterwards and they blow up some more stuff so they can build it. That's what happens. But when you have to do that, when you have to send the military into a situation, when it's done, the military doesn't go in there and teach civics classes. But the only reason this is sustainable is because our National Guard troops keep getting tapped to go. And I don't know the exact numbers, but during the 20 plus years of global war on terror, approaching 50% of the people who have been deployed into active combat theater operations have been National Guard troops. It might be higher than 50%. But what I do know for a fact, friends, allies, patriots, what I know for a fact is that of that 50%, the National Guard has sustained the highest level of casualties, percentage-wise. And that's in theater. But then you bring those boys home and those girls home too. You bring them home. You bring those National Guard troops home and you set them back down on the ground. They get off the plane and they get on another plane and they fly home and they go back to their job. You're just National Guard. You couldn't possibly have PTSD. Just go back to your daily job. Oh, you're a teacher? That's fine. Kids couldn't possibly trigger you when you have PTSD. I know there's not a lot of us here today, but I know there's quite a few people watching on all the different platforms. Show of hands for the people that are here. Who do you know who's been deployed in the last 20 years? Who do you know won't mention it, but you can see it in their eyes? PTSD is a reality for them. Every single one of them. Bob's son, Garrett, who I know wanted to be, sorry. Deserves to be here. Bob, how long were you in?
26 total.
26 total? Garrett was in for 3. Garrett is how old now?
25.
Garrett's 25-year-old son did 3 years active duty, who's a ranger. Bob and Garrett served in the same war. In the history of the modern Western world, that has never happened. Especially to Americans. That is sustainable is because we're short on troops for active duty military. We call out to the states and we say, hey, pull your guys out of the cornfields, pull your guys out of the logging areas, pull your guys out of the factories, pull your guys out of the warehouses, out of the colleges. We just need them for a few months. Everything's going to be okay. And then they come home. And they're driving down the street. Because, by the way, they still have a commitment. So they can't really get the kind of help they're supposed to get. They still have a commitment. They're driving down the street, sitting on the edge of the road, and they freeze. You know why they freeze? Because where they were, where they didn't belong, a box on the side of the road was a deadly threat. Or they don't go to the 4th of July celebrations anymore. And they get even less help than Garrett got when he came home. And if Bob wants to share more of Garrett's story, I'm sure he can, but I will tell you this, that Garrett had big problems with PTSD. And we almost lost Garrett in December of 2022. So if I look emotional, it's because I have been there from the day it happened. And I wanted to meet him today. It's got to stop. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of us here today, but like I said, I know there are people watching and there are people with us in spirit. I know that the guys at Defend the Guard and Bring Our Troops Home will share this out and they'll clip it and they'll bring home the message. But I also want to remind you guys that every movement starts small. It never starts with 5,000 people, comparatively. It starts with 3%, and it builds. So, this is my fault because I didn't save it on my phone. So, is it Alicia? Miss Alicia, it's your turn to come up here and sell the talking points.
Thank you. Well, thank you for letting me be here with you guys today. My name is Alicia Gruenhagen, and I just declared that I'm going to be running for the United States Senate for Amy Klobuchar's seat, and I am going to be seeking the endorsement of the constitutional party. And so it's really nice to be here. I'm from Minnesota. Forever. Born in Minnesota from Glencoe, which is a rural farming community just outside the Twin Cities. And I was listening to your comments here, and I was listening to, it's even educational just to listen to what each person has to say. But to hear you say that there's some parties that are here and some that are not, this is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. Can we all agree on that? Right? And so it's really good to be here. I like seeing what you guys are representing. I'm happy to see you, to stand here with you guys. I'm not an elected official on the state level, but I will be running for the United States. And if given the chance, I would love to represent you guys in the Senate in the U.S. I guess the only thing I can say to relate is I'm from a small farming community. There's a lot of people. I've seen the Guard driving up and down the street in Hutchinson, Minnesota, and I've known a lot of people who have served in the Guard. And I agree. I don't think it's right for us to be sending our troops into needless battles. And so someone needs to raise their voice because nothing gets done. So I know it's kind of a small group here, but I want to say the day that I came here last, just a couple weeks ago, was for the flag rally, and maybe a couple of you guys were here to support the Minnesota flag. And when I came, I felt small, and I felt like one person. And I remember I parked my car on the street just over here, and I said, what can I do about this? And I was very passionate and upset about the issue of the flag. And I thought, what can I really do? But I walked up and I said, I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to go and I'm going to bring the angels that go with me. And each of us has those, and you know that. Each of you know that. So you showing up today and you showing up anytime, even if it seems small, your presence is very powerful. It's very strong. And don't ever underestimate the power of your presence to come and to speak on a matter. And that day, I met Patrick and I met Stephen, and they talked to me about running for U.S. Senate, which was something already churning inside of me. So don't underestimate the power of just a small step to say, what can we all do together? Well, each of us can't do much on our own, but we can do something together. So showing up, being here, I just want to say thanks for coming, and here I am to support you too. All right, thanks for letting me say hi. God bless you.
You didn't have to ride with Pat or Stephen today, did you?
No.
Okay. I know how Pat drives. He sent me videos. You'll have to check out Cletus's commentary sometime. Pat's one of my feeds for that. She just announced. What are we gonna? Amy might be getting scared. There's options out there besides Amy. Let's go. I love what you said, and it's sometimes it's daunting to tackle a problem or find a solution and then go, well, how do I make this go away, this problem go away, when I'm the only one that has this solution? And then you find there are other people out there who have the exact same idea as you, and then you immediately recommend that they get psychological help. And then you go, oh, no, wait, we're all on the same page, so there's got to be something going on here that's positive. And that's one of the great things that I've realized. I've been coming to this building for 4 years. I've been coming to the state capitol and the governor's mansion since April of 2020. I know I don't need to talk about why that's a big deal. But I've been doing that for almost 4 years, and today is the first time that I have been inside of this building in 4 years. 4 years ago, it was a daunting problem. Outside. We couldn't get in. Some would say that that daunting problem hasn't completely gone away here in Minnesota. As we know, it's an uphill climb, but I wouldn't know anybody in this room, in this rotunda, if it wasn't for what was going on 4 years ago. And then some of you are like, we'd gladly give it back. But look at where we are. It's a coalition. This is a coalition. And it's what a coalition is supposed to be. It's not a caucus. A caucus is when you get a bunch of people who are exactly the same mindset of you, they're all in the same political party, and you all share exactly, outside of minor differences, you all share exactly the same mentality all the way down the wheel. Oh, check. Gun control, no, check. Freedom of choice in schools, check. Whatever the case might be, small government, check. Used to be able to count on a couple of people from different parties to be for that one, but that's getting smaller too. Back to military, check. Got that one. That's a caucus. This isn't a caucus. Because I guarantee you right now, in this room, with the two parties that are definitely represented, while we wait for one of the other members of the other party to show up, I guarantee you there are differences in perspective in those two parties that are represented in this room right now. But we're willing to fight together. We're willing to stand shoulder to shoulder and fight for what matters. And I have another statement here that I want to share with you. It's from my friend Mike Skipper Arthur. Mike has the pleasure of co-hosting a show with me. It's called Veteran Nation, and I say it's a pleasure because he was a Marine and an officer, so he's just dumb. And no offense to anybody that's commissioned officer in the United States military, but you know who does all the work. So Mike was a commissioned officer in the Marine Corps. He started out enlisted, but then he lost his mind. Mike wrote a bit of a statement. I'm going to share some of what he said. We're kind of on a hiatus right now, but we're getting ready to get rolling with the show again. And we've been passionate about this project for some time. And so I'm going to read a portion of what Mike wrote. He says, "This country expects the most out of its military. The word commitment is synonymous with the U.S. military service. As we the people expect that most of the military, As we the people expect the most out of the military, we have allowed it to be subverted and continually fail our commitment to it. From the commitment to treat our veterans, housing, medical, and financial needs, to just saying, welcome back. The Defend the Guard movement is a step in all of us collectively saying to our military members that we were wrong. We will work to fix it. And we have your back. Our founders debated if we should have a standing military. They were right to distrust future government leaders with abusing the privilege of having one. Our Guard and Reserve forces were created over a century later using those privileges. Another century later, it's clear that we have failed in that trust. We must now rein in our government leaders and limit their authority. We must show that the commitment now rests upon our shoulders, and Defend the Guard is the first step to maintaining that commitment. If you attention, recruitment numbers are way down. I think the Air Force is the only one that's maintaining a certain level of recruitment, but it's down too. We are overextended in the world. We send our Navy everywhere. We are deployed in numerous areas with just the Navy alone right now. And we're sending more fleet contingencies out into the world. Our Air Force is overextended. Most of what we're doing with our Air Force is drone piloting. And don't let anybody fool you that these drone pilots flying these hunter-killer drones are not experiencing the same PTSD that ground troops aren't facing, because they're sitting there pulling a trigger, not knowing whether or not the target they're aiming at is actually what they're told they're aiming at. Our Marines are overextended, our Army forces are overextended, and our numbers are dwindling. In Department of Defense, on some level, praise God, just laid off a bunch of people. But we're going to get to a point something's gonna happen. Did you watch the news yesterday? Know anything about the Crocus City Music Hall? Do you think Russia's not going to retaliate? And what's the United States' answer to that going to be? Wherever the retaliation is going to go, we are going to send money and equipment. It's going to be escalation. If I sound like I'm hitting a series of threes here, I am. Our numbers are low. Our force multipliers are low. They can't even keep people in the guard anymore. Remember the draft? You know that's still active, right? We have to do something. It's supposed to be about protecting our nation. We don't have enough National Guard troops to help in times of great natural disaster and devastation. They're deploying National Guard troops in New York State. They don't have enough National Guard troops in Texas right now to stop their troops from being overrun at the border. And Governor Abbott said, it's because they're deployed, so I don't have enough. And this is not an open borders conversation. I don't have that debate. That's not what I'm here for. But my point is that the state should be able to do something, and they can't because there are places where they don't belong, and we can stop that. We can end that. So we have Naveen's here. Naveen backs this up, and he's not even part of any of these parties. What did I say about the coalition? Naveen, come on up. Naveen, if I remember correctly, you're Iranian descent?
Of course, yes.
And he wants to share his thoughts on this because he comes from a family, if I read your bio right, family line that has seen what interventionism in the world looks like. So,
Yep.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Naveen, and I am the Midwest District Chair of a group called Movement for a People's Democracy. We aren't the DFL, but however, we are on the left. So we have left, right, and center present here at this Defend the Garden rally today. So the reason why, I reached out to the Minnesota Libertarian Party, and our group threw our support behind this legislation and joined this coalition, is because we are currently in a dangerous point in the world. Basically, we have conflict in Ukraine that doesn't seem to be slowing down. We've got the Middle East currently on fire. And frankly, everybody can feel it, regardless if you're on the left, if you're on the right, if you're somewhere in the middle. Everybody can feel that the current state of the world is not the way to go. And at this point in time, Defend the Guard legislation is probably the most powerful legislation to put a dent, drive a wedge into the war machine. And when reading through this legislation, it's interesting to note that basically this is a step in the right direction to dismantling what was brought to our nation in response to September the 11th. So basically, 1 week after September the 11th, September 18, 2001, the United States Congress passed the authorization of the use of military force. Passed almost bipartisanly. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the The only politician that voted against it was Barbara Lee, yep, from California. And basically, we are currently living in that world of the global war on terror. We all know that the war on terror was a lie, completely lied to us about everything, but we're still living in that world. The AUMF has not stopped. And basically, it gets to the point where President Joe Biden, in his State of the Union address, can announce, yeah, we're going to send troops to go build a port off the coast of Gaza. And then they go ahead and do that. And frankly, we all know that this is not the way it should be. This is not the way things should be. We've got to pull back. We've got to stop this. You know, the American people don't want wars. You know, we don't want 800 military bases. We don't want to send people overseas. Nobody wants this, except, you know, people in Washington, D.C., who are making all the decisions for us. And frankly, you know, that's why passing this legislation is so important, and that's why, you know, we're happy to support this. You know, and frankly, you know, if we pass Defend the Guard legislation in the state of Minnesota, then we can, theoretically speaking, tell the federal government, yeah, we're not going to send troops to your borders, we're going to block them. And that's why this is so powerful. If more people knew how this all works and the difference between the government and the separation of powers between federal and state government and how it all works, I believe that there would be more people here today. But that's part of the problem. We need more education. We need to get the word out. We need to inform. We got to teach the people about why this is needed, how it works in progress or in practice, and essentially build the movement from start. Because the movement doesn't stop here today. This is just the beginning. The movement is continuous, you know, and that's kind of what we at the Movement for People's Democracy believe. It's a continuous movement to build, you know, a strong anti-war movement in the United States that can get stuff like this passed. And frankly, you know, and it doesn't even stop once we get Defend the Guard legislation passed. That's just the beginning. You know, if we want to bring our troops home, if we want to stop the 800 military bases and having all of our troops sent all over the world in places that we probably don't even know they're sent, to be honest, we've got to build the movement, and we've got to continuously keep pushing and building. And, you know, this coalition is a perfect vehicle to do that. So that's all I wanted to say today. And yeah, thank you very much to everybody involved in putting this on.
Thank you, David. David just proved my coalition point. You guys are lucky now because the speaker that we were kind of trying to space out for showed up, so now we're going to just rip through this rapid fire. It's probably a bad terminology to use when you're talking about military. Let's stay away from that language right now. Bob, you want to make your way up here? If I sound like I pick on Bob a lot, it's because I can. He's retired, so he can no longer officially hurt me. Unofficially, you can hurt me a lot, but he can. But yeah, Bob and I were roughly at Bragg about the same time. Never knew each other. Fort Bragg. It's like when you go to Fort Bragg, it's like you meet somebody from Chicago and their name is Bill, and you go, hey, yeah, you know Bill? Sure. Because everybody in Chicago named Bill hangs out. Yeah. Fort Bragg is a very strange place, and Bob and I were there about the same time, and we probably even trained together. The way things work.
Some of the same places.
Some of the same places, yeah. So Bob is a 20-some year veteran of the United States Army Special Forces. For you schlubs out there, we call that the Green Beret. So they get to keep the beret. The Rangers lost theirs. They got a tan one. What's the word, tan beret? But Bob has some stories to tell.
All right, well, thanks, Casey. All right, I guess it's my turn up here. Talk a little bit about Afghanistan. I'm not going to pretend, knowing what I know now about Afghanistan, I'm not going to pretend that it was an old thing or anything. But let's just pretend it was for just going to talk a little bit about the initial invasion. I was there fairly early on. I wasn't on horseback or anything, but I was there at the end of 2001. I was there all the way to September 2002. So I saw the way it was supposed to go. Originally, the end of combat operations was supposed to be June 30th of 2002. So there was actually a drop dead date. Knowing the history of the region, obviously for a little bit older people in here, you know that the Soviets went in there in '79. It didn't go well for them. Prior to them, back in the previous century, the Brits were in there. Didn't go well for them either. They spent on and on, almost 100 years in there. Did not go well for them either. So knowing that history, we studied it before we went in the couple months that we had prior to going in. We knew that we had to kind of get everything over with quickly and try to leave the country at least a little bit better than what we had found it to begin with. So the plan was end combat operations June 30th. And then in probably about May, we were starting already transition into some civic action projects. We had opened up girls' school in Gardez. There, the Taliban. The Taliban were not the Taliban that you think of that you hear in the news, in the next 19 years. Taliban were just basically the ruling people of the country. They didn't necessarily like it, but the people did like us because we had kind of freed them of, we'd gotten Al-Qaeda out of there and we had kind of broken the rule that the Taliban had on the people. So they kind of had to go along with what we were doing. So the people liked us, the Taliban had to go along with what we were doing. And we were having some success with what was going on. But somewhere along the line, somebody up above kind of changed the script out on us. We didn't really know on the ground what was going on, and we saw conventional forces starting to come in. So somewhere in there, it had changed along, I think, originally, so Donald Rumsfeld, kind of a villain, right? But he had a good idea on the way to conduct all this stuff. It was supposed to mostly be done with Special Operations Forces with a small footprint. Iraq was supposed to be the same way. Somewhere, somebody changed things and it turned into big conventional forces with lots of people and spending lots of money, and that was probably the reason for it, was that way we could spend a lot of money on it. So we saw conventional forces starting to come in, little villages that we had good working relationships with. Watched one of them, we actually watched it happen. We had gone in, talked to the people, because there was a company wanting to come in and search the village. So we went in to check to make sure that it was safe for the unit to come in, the conventional unit. And they came in, did a cordon search and started kicking doors in and just basically pissed off the entire village. So we lost rapport with that village, and then it started to happen on a bigger and bigger scale. So people will say that we lost Afghanistan because we tried doing nation building in there. Well, we didn't really try to do nation building. We installed a puppet government, and then we continued to conduct combat operations until we had finally formed an insurgency that we could fight, and then that justified pouring in more and more combat troops. And the one thing about an insurgency is the only way to beat an insurgency is to not start it. So we will never beat an insurgency once it's going, and we learned that lesson the hard way. Like TC said, my son was 3 years old when I went to Afghanistan. He doesn't even, I asked him the other day when I was pulling some stuff together for this, if he even remembers me going. He doesn't. And that's not because of the head injury that he got when he got hit by a car when he walked out, stepped out in front of it, on purpose. His memory is fine. He just doesn't remember because he was such a little kid at the time. He had just turned 3 years old when I went. So he doesn't even remember it, but yet he had just turned 20 years old when he went to Afghanistan, the 2nd Ranger Battalion. So that's how long a conflict that was over with by April or May of 2002 continued for almost 20 years. It ended. We finally pulled out in disgrace just short of 20 full years of an involvement in Afghanistan. So that's how badly we screwed all that up. But we created that insurgency that was not That was nothing that was in the country in the middle of 2002. It was completely over with. Al Qaeda was gone. We created that. We own that. We completely screwed that country up. We own every bit of that. I think I saw something, total war dead for Afghanistan and kind of into Pakistan, the places that we had involved with that. I think it's like 243,000. Just because we couldn't leave it alone. So the reason we were able to do that is because we were able to start mobilizing Guard units. We would not have been able to build up forces in Afghanistan while we were building up to go into Iraq at the same time if we had not had National Guard forces that we were able to mobilize. When I got home from Afghanistan, I got it finished up there in September of 2002, came home on leave. And the 20136, the National Guard unit that's up around, like battalion headquarters is in Moorhead, Minnesota, but the companies are out in the surrounding area. They were training up to get ready to be deployed to the Balkans. So that's, I think they actually went into Kosovo for that battalion. But they were spinning up at the end of 2002, they went into 2003. So they replaced a unit that would have, I think, come out of Germany otherwise. That unit that was in Germany went to Iraq instead. They replaced that unit in the Balkans. The only reason Big Army is able to do that is they had a Guard unit that they were able to mobilize and put in there. Otherwise, they did not have the forces built. So that's a Guard unit right here in Minnesota that was mobilized for that. That same Guard unit, 1st Brigade, 34th Division, basically the whole of the Minnesota National Guard later on in 2006 went to Iraq. And ended up doing the longest deployment of any unit, reserve or active component, spent 16 months in Iraq because they got caught in the surge. So 16 months. So funny thing about it, not funny, but 34th Division also has the record for the longest division, longest time in active combat during World War II. And then the 1st Brigade has the longest deployment in G1. So, for, it's coincidence or just they're unlucky, 34th Division has made a little bit of history. But it's Guard units. I mean, and that, think about it, that's a Guard unit that has been mobilized. So they basically mobilized in 2003 to go to Kosovo, I think it's Kosovo, and then again in 2006. So very rapid turnaround for a Guard unit. But that's how heavily they were relying on Guard units. And then, same thing coming out of big Guard units like Texas, California. A lot of the southern states are very heavy. They have a lot of Guard units. A lot of these Guard units they would come home, get a year or two at home, and they were going right back. So they you see that the strain that they were taking during that really busy time. The guys are at work, they have jobs. They might do a year in country, but they're doing a 6-month train up prior to it, and then they have time afterwards. Go back into their job for a year, and they're getting pulled back out of their job, and they have to go back. So it's just, we owe it to those people to do something to try to get them a break. It's not as bad now, with the outcome being a little slower, but the thing with, you've got leadership within the units, and what I'm hearing when Defend the Guard goes into these state legislatures is that the people that politicians talk to, as they go and they talk to the senior leadership of these National Guard units, the leadership likes those deployments because it's good for their careers. And during GMOD, really casualty rates were kind of low. Comparatively, it wasn't like World War II. The next one, we've got stuff going on in Russia right now. But think about Russia. Think about the casualty rates that the Ukrainians are taking. Now think about a Guard unit going in and taking the place, say, against Russians and taking those kind of casualty rates and it being one of your guard units. So now instead of one or two guys in a battalion getting killed in deployment, a year-long deployment, you could have like in World War II, where small town out in rural Minnesota, 10 guys in a week. That's the kind of stuff that we have the very real potential that we could be dealing with. And really, politicians are going crazy right now. You look at the stuff that's going on in Washington, you've got guys like Lindsey Graham that are just, I mean, it's like they're spinning out of control. And politicians and you've got Macron in France that is basically, when they start getting to where they're not popular, they look like they're going to lose an election, and now they just want to throw it all in because their political career is ending, and what the hell, let's go to war. So, and what they're forgetting, and I don't think they really care, but there's the people's lives that they're dealing with are regular people, but they don't care about the regular people. So that's where this legislation, the Family Guard, is very important. And that's kind of the difference between a politician and a statesman. A politician doesn't give a shit about the people. He only cares about his career, whereas a statesman actually cares about the people they represent. And unfortunately, most of these legislatures are siding with the senior leadership. They come to get a little bit of pressure from the general, and they will not support defending guard legislation. So, unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with a lot. And when you mentioned Democrats, DFL, and how there are none here, and it seems like the only support we have right now, even we've got one Republican here, legislator. There's a few of us here that were old enough, Skip, I'm looking at you. A few other people, but those, my friends. Rudy Purpich, governor of Minnesota, way back when, he's passed now, but in the late 80s, there were Democrat governors that actually took the federal government to court. It ended up in the Supreme Court. I think it was settled in 1990. They lost. But the state governments took the federal government to court because the federal government was mobilizing state National Guards for training missions outside CONUS, or outside the continental United States. And what they were doing, really, was they were taking them down to Honduras and building airstrips. Didn't realize at the time what that was all being used for. Think about Central America, South America, airstrips in Honduras. Think about what was being flown into Central America, what was coming out of Central America, where it was going. Conspiracy theories aren't necessarily always theories. Stuff is real. So anyway, they were protesting that. California, I think, was the first state that actually protested it, lost. Sonny Montgomery was a big, it was Montgomery GI Bill. He was very pro-military. Alabama or Mississippi. He was the federal government. He wrote an amendment to it that actually kind of codified into law that they could steal state National Guards and use them for that. So then they appealed it, basically. It went through some district courts, a couple of National Guards out east. It finally ended up in Minnesota again. And Rudy Purpich ended up being the case that took it to the Supreme Court. So it was Purpich versus the United States. But that was all DFL fighting it back then. And it finally was decided in 1990. The states lost that court case. But back then it was the DFL fighting it, or the Democrats in Minnesota was the DFL. And they finally lost it. And you're now, 30-some years later, another one to be seen. So hopefully, as we're fighting that, maybe we can remind them that Rudy Purpich would like to have a little bit of support from, or he would lend his support maybe from the grave. make a, I don't know, use that somehow.
Work a Rudy Purpich ad.
Work a Rudy Purpich ad in there somehow, that would be something that we could use, but I think it's something that, this is good legislation, we gotta somehow put the brakes on it, because the military themselves will not stop it. I know being young, it was exciting to get out there and do that stuff. I just saw a meme the other day, it was pictures of high-speed stuff, and it was young men's dreams or old men's nightmares, and it really kind of hit home that when you're young, you want to get out and do that stuff. When you're old, you realize all the baggage. They're not going to want to stop it themselves, so we need to stop it. Those of us that know better. He likes to say I'm old.
He's old. You never invite a special forces guy to do a presentation because he turns it into a training mission. Every time. He cards, I'm going to notice that people actually get cards, they still write on postcards, recipe cards. I'm going to make fun of him for that for the rest of his life. TJ, you're next. So now we're in a position where I get to sit, and TJ's running for office. So now you got to get this all in as fast as possible, TJ, and make it understandable.
Go listen to it, TJ. Go on.
Hey, thanks for stealing my thunder there, TC. They actually announced that I'm running for office this year, and yeah. I did it in 2022, ran for Minnesota House District 44B with the Libertarian nomination. And we got almost 5% of the vote there with minimal work done, but this year is definitely going to be different. And this is absolutely my #1 priority, always has been. Just to piggyback off of what Bob was talking about, my destiny was being in the military, man. My own man was a Navy Chief Petty Officer, and I just thought that's what you do. And Gulf War happened, and my old man was about to get deployed, and I thought, hey, that's just part of life, man. That's just kind of what you do. And then I grew up, and I joined. And this was, hey, I'm 3rd generation military man, and 2001, January 2001, I joined, and I was in school when 9/11 happened, and the Marine Corps instructor that I was learning electronics from pops in, "Oh boy, we're going to war, boy!" And he was so effing excited, and I tell you what, it motivated the hell out of me, and I was totally excited as well. I thought we need to get over there. We need to go over there and kill them before they come back over here and kill us. This was ignorant. I think most of us know this by now, but it took me a while to figure this out, man. I was a Squid Amongst Marines stationed at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar in San Diego when OEF began, and all the Marines are gone. I had nothing but beach duty, man. I had nobody to support but the one Lippin squadron there in San Diego, and freaking life was gravy, man. I was living in San Diego in 2002 to 2004, thinking that this was war, this is how it worked, and yeah, all my Marines were gone, and it was just me and the other squid, and a couple other broke Marines, and it was a critical thinking Marine. I swear, TC, these guys exist, and this guy really showed me the light on how much of a racket the military is, and you know, the material cost is shit. It's just that, it's shit. But the thing is the web of lives of our service members and our folks that get over there and they're plugged from their active duty service for their family and their community. So what? What exactly is happening over there, man? Just like what these guys are saying and what Bob is saying, so my active duty service was from 01 to 06, and then I was mobilized as a reservist in the Navy. Going back, I was an electronics nerd, man. I worked on circuit cards, and again, I learned how the racket was real early, what my job was and what my duty was, and I realized, what the F am I really doing here? But then I got mobilized as a customs agent. They took 450 of us, made a battalion of sailors to get over to Kuwait and make sure nobody brings home porn. Make sure nobody brings home freaking live rounds or whatever, right? You know, God forbid you have a war trophy from Iraq. But then again, that's when I did meet the Red Bulls that came home from that 2006. This was the summer of 2007. After 22 months, these ladies and gentlemen came home, and I got to speak and party. I mean, we drank lots of near beer with them. And these were our heroes going home to my home state, Minnesota. We had a great representation in that Customs Battalion. We had the Minnesota Mafia. You know, I thought it was so cool being in the military, and it was, when you really learn the idiocracy that's going on with what the hell are we doing over there? And then we get lies. We get told that, hey, these guys, Arizona National Guard members are operating in Jordan, when actually they were in Syria illegally, and then they get killed, and then let's go support our troops. Hey, thank you for your service. This kind of stuff, you know, it's an honor, right? We had a great time. Like I said, a great duty. I didn't have anything to really worry about in my life. I did have some brothers, and man, those Marines, we can make fun of them all day long, but those guys would jump in front of anything for us. And so it's not about the guys and the gals that are doing this, it's these guys that operate out of this building. We gotta stop this. So, you know, the answer to thanking your service members for the duty isn't to thank them after, you know, Wounded Warrior Project and all these things are some great effing things, man. Who can say no to that? And when you tell somebody why do we need this? Well, you don't care for this person? Well, you're darn right I do. Don't you care that you don't want to repeat this stupidity? It's a no-brainer for me, man, and I really think everybody I talk to in the normie world, hell yeah, it's a no-brainer. I'm surprised not more people are here. That circus and NCAA is going on. You know, hey, this is what happens. We got to stop. You know what? Do whatever you feel you need to do. I'm not telling anybody to stop doing anything unless you're hurting someone, right? But hey, this isn't. This is real life, and I'm done. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to point out that you just saw the birth of a politician. He censored his own language. I've never seen that happen on live TV before. He just we need less of that, more of that. Thank you, TJ. I thought I was the only emotional person here, right? Ahmed, where you at? Come on up. I've had the pleasure of being on a show with Ahmed here a few weeks ago. The guy asked some interesting questions, and he doesn't just like let things go by. So we need to lower this a little bit.
So today I just want to stand before you and shed light on the virtues of anti-war sentiments. In a world often overshadowed by conflict and discord, the pursuit of peace not only becomes a noble endeavor, but a moral imperative. I am burdened by the weight of the horrors of the countless lives that we've lost and all the horrors that we leave and plague our world, leaving a trail of destruction from every place that we have set ourselves on. First and foremost, anti-war advocacy champions the sanctity of human life. It acknowledges the irreplaceable value of every individual, regardless of their nationality. By rejecting the path of violence and warfare, we uphold the inherent dignity of every person to strive for and resolve conflicts through dialogue and diplomacy. The Iraq War stands as a stark reminder of the catastrophic consequences of unchecked aggression and grave misjudgments. Thousands of innocent lives were lost, millions displaced, and and we created the most violent terrorist regime known in the history of the world. And for what? WMDs that were never found, hundreds of thousands of our troops that will never be recreated properly in any way, shape, or form, for WMDs that never existed. Anti-war movements foster global cooperation and solidarity. They recognize that true security cannot be achieved through the proliferation of weapons and escalation of tensions, but through mutual respect, trust, and collaboration amongst all nations. By promoting resolutions to conflicts, we pave a way for a more stable and prosperous world for our future generations. The morality of defending one's nation is a noble cause, but we must question by the means that we are pursuing it. Is it justifiable to sacrifice the lives of our young men and women, to inflict suffering on the innocent, all in the name of national defense? Let us work tirelessly to prevent the next Iraq War, the next needless loss of life, and to keep our troops home to defend our national security. As we stand on the precipice of uncertainty, let us choose the path of peace, reject the drums of war, and it is not through violence that we will achieve lasting security, but through the bonds of friendship and the pursuit of common humanity. Thank you.
You need to run for office. That was amazing. You just got your point out, got it done, kept it short.
2 for 2.
I'm pick on everybody. Stephen Lowell is next. He's just rushing me. He doesn't even want to know what I'm going to say about the next. Stephen, get up here. Stephen is also ran for office recently, almost reluctantly. And he's now active interim chair of the Constitutional Republican Party, because the other chair is running for office. You'll be hearing from him as well. This is what I talk about with coalitions, and I know how passionate he is about this project, because he spoke at the last rally that we had almost 2 years ago that Lowell put on then, and it was outside of this morning. So, Steve.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys all for being here. And for those watching at home, thank you for your time. So, as the gentleman in the back astutely put it, war's a real thing. Some wars are justified, some wars are not. Some wars are cold, and some wars are bloody, violent, and intense. But all war is a racket. Somebody's got to sell the guns, somebody's got to buy them. Same for the bullets, the bombs, the planes, etc. Doesn't change much. Now, in terms of speech etiquette, I tried to look at notes, but this is going to be a banger, so you get comfortable. I want to start with a brief primer about boundaries, layers, and permissions. As Naveen pointed out in his speaking segment, we have the AUMF, the Authorized Use of Military Force, which is a abomination to all reasonable governance, and I'll put that out right front because that's ridiculous. Our different layers, specifically because if you let people take power and run with it, they'll run through blood, and they'll keep doing it because they're not the ones doing the shooting or the killing. So you gotta kind of keep them on a leash. That's what we built this nation for. If you don't do it, people die. It's not very complicated, it ain't new. So we gotta kind of keep an eye on it. The AUMF flies directly in the face of that. While I certainly understand the sentiment with which it was put forth, there was a whole lot of lives lost that day. Just the same, doesn't necessarily justify the lives that were lost going forward. So, a brief part of the AUMF. The AUMF basically means that the president, as Naveen said, can just point the finger and pull the trigger, which is kind of why we have presidents to begin with, and not just dictators or warlords. That kind of creates a mess, because you can just point the finger wherever you don't like and get rid of it. So we can't have that. But right now, of course, a derelict and completely outrageous lack of respect for the will of the American people, and it's flown flagrantly in Congress and DC. And we should all stand up and do something about that. That's probably a good idea. So, the point I'm making here is the AUMF indemnifies Congress for having to declare war, which is a layer, it's a layer we need, because without that layer, we can be sending our best and brightest to the meat grinder without a second thought, and I think we all pretty much agree that's a bad thing. So we should probably avoid that where we can. So the AOMF has to go, and that's the beginning of this particular spurt. Don't worry, I'm getting there. So that being an issue, we can get to the next step in this process. So obviously Congress has to be the party that declares war, so that way we have the people's agreement, and it's on somebody's job. If they declare war wrongly, then they can be voted out of office next cycle and halt the grinder. So, we have one of the greatest, if not the greatest fighting force this planet has ever seen. Humanity's never seen people this good at it. It's terrifying. And they're volunteers, which we all know, which is impressive. They willingly said, yeah, let's be the sharpest knife on the planet, and let's go get something we love before. That being said, this is of course evidence of a good idea. If you have an idea good enough, people move, they stand up, they'll walk with it, they'll push it, they'll fight for it. And we have very, very blessed men and women who fight, kill, and die for it, voluntarily. You don't have to push them, you don't have to conscript them, you don't have to knock on their door and say it's your time, please send out your children, your sons, etc. You don't have to do that. We volunteer in this country, and it's a beautiful thing. But it ain't looking too great lately. You know, let's check in on that. I just Googled Army recruiting crisis, and it's quite the page. Missing goal by 15,000 in 22, missing goal by 16,000 in 2024. It continues going. Ideology, not lack of funds, is behind our military's recruiting crisis. Chiefs discuss military recruiting challenges. It's a bad idea of running these days, and it is. And that, of course, brings us to the main event, which is the Guard. The Guard has been taxed unnecessarily, and of course, our local, state, best and brightest show up right like a bushy tail, fulfill their oath, and defend their state, even if they're defending their state in Iraq, which we all understand. When you sign in the dotted line, I've never served, of course, but I do understand what it means. You sign in the dotted line, you go where they send you, you don't ask a ton of questions, that's the rules, I don't make rules. So, cool. But we do have a little bit of accountability and responsibility, because we, the people, should be making those rules. And those rules are being flaunted every single day. It can certainly stand to stop. I'm not sure if anyone knows here, but in late February, the Red Bulls are planning on a 10-month deployment to the Middle East, Mission Information Tech, somewhere over there. For 10 months, that's almost a year. I love the military, and I do happen to harbor a military bearing. I've asked repeatedly if I serve almost everywhere I go, because I like the idea of structure, I like the idea of regimented thought process and acting and living for a purpose. It makes us all very useful and capable. That being said, when folks sign on that line, they are giving up that free will to a degree to our nation's government, which operates with our blessing. It's very, very important way to it. I wanted to read some stories of some National Guard members, but of course their families are private individuals, and that information is a little hard to find. I think next rally I'm going to have quite a bang. So anyhow, the movement for Defend the Guard is to try to wrest some of that AOMF authority away, try to put that flag firmly on the soil of the states that bring forth these guardsmen and women to serve their states, in their states, because states do have national disasters, we do have natural disasters, we do have natural crises, we have rolling blackouts, we have all kinds of crazy things that people could probably use the Guard to respond to and augment their municipal contemporaries in ways that would help. But like in Texas, they're gone. I am sure that has absolutely nothing to do with the things that are going on in Texas and New York respectively. Go ahead and read between the lines, we all know how we're Americans. So, the architecture of an idea in motion here, I'm going to refer to a very famous occurrence. It's George Washington leaving the hall where they basically designed our country. He was stopped by a woman, she said, well, what have you given us? And he said, a republic, man, if you can keep it. I want to outline that phrase because you have to keep these ideas moving. part of a movement is to bring that awareness and bring that energy so that when people look at it with fresh eyes again, and they can't look away, because you can never look away. If you're going to be an independent, actualized human being, you have to look. You can't just avert your eyes and pretend that it doesn't suck. It sucks. People are dying. It's painful. We should do something about it. And so, the goal, of course, here being to not to sting like a gadfly. Socrates is awesome, by the way, if you don't read. But we need to actively shackle the terror of tyranny that lurks wherever individuals gather with the power of governments. It has to be kept in check. And right now, they're just flaunting that and sending basically everybody they can point a finger at to go die whatever field benefits them, usually personally. So, I feel like that caps it off kind of nicely. My name is Stephen Lowell. I ran for state senate District 52 last cycle. I currently am the interim chair of the Minnesota, well, we're actually national right now. We're attempting to get on the ballot, and that should happen soon this cycle. The Constitutional Republic Party, we're constitutionalists, and we'd love you to come check out the website at some point. Shameless plug. Thank you guys so much for your time, and the best is yet to come.
Senator Nathan Wiesenberg is next. This should be interesting. He's been driving all day, so he cannot be responsible for anything that he may or may not say about why he had to drive all day. Senator?
Great, thank you. Well, thank you guys for having me. I have had a few events, and this is my last one for today, and I get to go home with the kids, so it's good. But there's not a whole lot more I need to say that hasn't already been said, and we know that we have to quit sending our friends and family, loved ones over to fight wars that are never ending, and just killing precious Americans. So I was asked to bring forward the Defend the Guard legislation last year, and I did that. I tried getting some. We do have multiple other Republicans on this bill. I tried getting some Democrat support. There are Democrats here that say they support ending wars, but I haven't gotten one on the bill yet. I did talk to a senator this year that didn't know about it. It sounds like she may be interested in getting on board. She hasn't signed on yet, but there's hope. It's someone that thinks we should be not doing this. Our Constitution says we can't go to war unless it's an act of Congress. And how many years has it been since we've done that? We're just sending people to die for no reason. Look what we had when Trump was in office. We had world peace. They said, oh, we're going to go to war forever. What happened? People were afraid because we had a strong leader. We need strong leadership. And we need to keep guardsmen here in the States to defend our borders. Right now, we've got an invasion in our own country, and we can't keep that from happening. And that's going to cost lives and money here. But people who signed up to be guardsmen for their country are being sent to Ukraine and Bosnia and wherever, and Somalia, and to fight wars, and that's not what they signed up for. So I'm not going to go on a lot more, but I'm here for you. I want you to contact me. I want you to know that we're going to keep pushing this. We need to get more senators and more House members on this bill, and we need to push it. We need to actually follow the Constitution and follow what our founding fathers want us to do. Thank you.
I want you guys to understand something too, and I'm going to make this quick because we got a couple more people to get through. Because when you're in the Capitol building, time's all that matters. Nate's a man of principle. I know I should refer to him as senator, but I don't know like titles that much, except for Madam Chair. Where's she at? Madam Chair. Nate's a man of principle. He's not a man of party line. He took a very hard stance this last week and caught some guff for it. Is that fair to say? And I understand why he took guff, and I can understand the emotionalism behind it. But when people of both of the major parties that make up the Minnesota House and Senate decide they're going to make an issue emotional because of such and such, Nate opposed that. He said, well, wait a minute, any infringement on gun rights is an infringement on gun rights, no matter what your emotional investment is. This is why we need to support people like this. So none of you have heard me say, I am never going to support the Republicans again. That doesn't mean I won't stand with Republicans. But when they do the right thing, and you've heard me say it multiple times already today, when they do the right thing, damn it, support them. Let them know. That's how we make change. I just wanted to put you on the spot. Thank you. So, either we are people of principle and we're people of ethics, or we're principally unethical. That's all we're left with. So we got Noel Johnson coming up here. His name is Travis. Right? You imagine him sitting in the House of Representatives. It's coming. He says it's coming. So he's the one that organized the first rally that Minnesota ever had for the Defend the Guard, if I remember correctly. And that was almost 2 years ago, and it was a very warm day. And we had Scott Horton and Jesse Ventura here. And those of you who don't know who Scott Horton is, you don't get Scott Horton off the stage, and you don't get Jesse Ventura off the stage. But we managed to use Scott to make it a lot harder for Jesse to stay on forever.
If I thought about it, we would have sold tickets for the fight for the stage.
Well, I was came here and I was prepared to lead off with a joke about somebody telling me this was a Grizzly Adams look-alike contest, and then I look at all the people there who would not know what I was talking about. So I do want to thank everybody for coming here. I especially want to thank Rebecca for taking the charge and helping set this thing up. I originally started to schedule this, and then I decided to run for the state house, and that quickly took up all my bandwidth, and I just did not have the room to give it the attention that it needed. And Rebecca was kind enough to take the lead with this and put together this great coalition. And I do want to take a moment to thank her for saving my bacon on that, because again, it would not have nearly have gone off if I had to try to do that and run for the House. I'm a 20-year Army vet, so veterans issues mean a lot to me. I was a little late here coming today because I actually had to drop off 3 piglets at Eagles Healing Nest, which is an organization in Sauk Center. And these veterans are going to learn how to raise these pigs up and then use it to help support the people at the Eagles Healing Nest. And that was a very, very big issue for me, so I was glad I was able to pull it off at the same time as coming down here. It said that the best thing we can ever do for America's combat vets is to stop making them. And to me, that's what a lot of this is about. Since World War II, the last time the United States has declared war, 200,000 of my brothers in arms have died in combat without a declaration of war. I ain't stutter, that's at 200,000. We have sent and participated in 19 wars since World War II. I don't know about you guys, but when I went to school, I learned about 2 and now maybe 3 with the Persian Gulf War. But we actually participated in 19 without Congress ever doing their job and declaring war. To me, this is about multiple things, but one of the things is about accountability. I want these congressmen and women to go on the record when they decide to send somebody to war. I want it done each and every time we send somebody to a combat zone, because when our sons and daughters die, I want to be able to go to them and say, was it worth it? Was these lives worth whatever you think it was worth? There was once a time where the thought process was the American president could react and deploy our military if the United States was ever attacked. Somewhere, somehow, down the line, that has gotten changed to our country being attacked, to our interests being attacked. And it's been abused. The American military-industrial complex and our war machine, so to speak, counts on being able to use the National Guard. That is their reserve force. So they count on, when they figure out what can we do, where can we afford to send troops, they count on having that reserve force. This is about shutting off that spigot. This is about saying, no, you cannot have these troops. These belong to the state. These belong to the homeland. And unless you actually do your job, no, you can't have them. Okay, these belong to the states. That's how this was originally the United States of America. That the states are supposed to be a part of the check and balance that this system's government was based on. And they have forgotten that. They have, pardon me using a medieval term, they decided to just bend the knee to the federal government instead of standing up for what they are supposed to be responsible for. That's what a republic is supposed to really, truly be about. And they've forgotten that. And this is about reminding the governor of, hey, you have a spine. We're going to give you your spine back if you lost it somewhere along the way. Use it. We need to restore the power back to the people. I mean, so much of our documents and our history is based off of we, the people. But somehow our leaders are, and I use that term very loosely in this case, have forgotten that. They somehow thought it was about them, it was about them, their organizations. They forgot it was about the people. And if they don't remember this, somewhere in the near future, they're probably going to come to a very rude awakening. And I hope it never comes to that, but I'm scared it might. Because somehow they need to be reminded. We have lost too many of my brothers and sisters. And I'm tired of it. And I'll be honest with you, I mentioned earlier, I'm running for office. I'm running for the House District 1B, which is very northwest portion of the state near Grand Forks, about 4.5 hours away. And they had scheduled a county convention for one of our from within my district this morning for the GOP. And I basically said my condolences. I mean, these are important events for people running for office, those county conventions. It allows you to get up there and speak to the delegates who are going to decide who's going to be the endorsement. But this is the priority. This is that important. That me, who was running for office in the GOP, basically said, I'm not going to be able to go to this county convention because I've got a chance to come up here and try to make a difference and save lives and return power back to the states and back to our country. If more people felt that way, I think this would be a lot easier road to hoe. The fact that we've only got one sitting state representative or senator who's came here for this and thought enough about it, it's kind of discouraging. But it also meant that one person did stand up. One person did show up. So I do want to thank all of you who have showed up here and who believe in this movement. And we're not going to stop. We're just going to keep it going and until we get this passed. I mean, we're not alone in this, people. Don't think we are. This movement is going on in states all across the country. Okay, so it is not something that we're fighting alone here. There are a lot of bills being pushed through all over the country. But we need to make sure our guys know that they're not going to get a free pass on this, that we are going to expect them to take a stand in what they believe in and return the power to the people. So thank you all very much, guys. And my name is Travis Bull Johnson. Please keep me in mind. I've got some pamphlets in the back if y'all ever are interested in what I'm about. And thank y'all.
We're going to have Rebecca come up here. I've been referring to her as Madam Chair.
I've seen your speech. I might want to go to the bathroom.
Not to make Rebecca any more nervous than she already is, but there's only a few hundred people watching online.
I thought it was 1,000.
Oh, but for those that are watching, by the way, thank you very much. And if you would share this out, especially afterwards, to your friends in Minnesota. Not that other places aren't important, but we definitely want this to take root and gain ground here in the state of Minnesota. Rebecca has been driving this for some time, and then she was also task force.
Where's TJ at? TJ's around here talking to me. I was on their show a few weeks ago, and the next day Rebecca's like, "Hey, how would you like to MC the event?" And I'm like, "Oh," and then before I had a chance to answer, she said that Stephen Lowell said that you would do it or he was going to kick your butt. Those were not the words that he used. He used another word. And so I don't want to say I'm here under duress, but I might be here under duress. But because I had to go to the cities. So, but Rebecca has been driving this for some time, as well as managing the Libertarian Party of Minnesota itself, and some other things that she has going on. And I'm trying to kill a few minutes so she doesn't feel pressured to fill her entire speech. So now I told her I was going to sit right in front and stare at her the whole time. If that doesn't make you nervous, I don't know what will. So Rebecca, thank you for doing this today. Thank you for putting this together. And whenever you're ready to be done, you just call me up and I'll move it close. Okay.
Okay. I've got to tell you, I was always told to just imagine everybody in the audience in their underwear makes less nervous. It's not true. So I'm just going to read what I have written and just remember that I'm not here because I'm a professional. I'm here because I'm angry. First, I do want to thank everybody that came out today, the people that planned to make this happen. When we came here, despite our differences and our backgrounds, because we have one thing in common, a hatred for the military-industrial complex, and a drive to make it stop. A dream of peace in our time. If that's the only thing that we ever agree on, that is enough to be kindred souls. My name is Rebecca Whiting. I am a homeschooling mom of a large family. I have a small farm in northern Minnesota near Bemidji, and I am the current chair of the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. But most importantly, and the reason I'm speaking today, is that I'm an Army combat veteran that served 2 tours to Iraq as a medic during very key points of the war, times which will have gone down in history that I got to witness firsthand. And I might need to take a few breathers while I go through this. Apologize in advance. I came here today to speak in support of the Defend the Guard legislation. I am not going to bore you with my philosophy. I'm not going to lecture you on why I believe that pursuing this is in the best interest of Minnesotans' national security or worldwide stability, at least not yet. But I am coming here today with stories, and if you will have some patience with me, I might be able to get through them all. I got to join the Army in September 2000, just a year shy of the events of 9/11. I had taken a lot of time to pick a job that I wanted to be. The first job that I was offered was a 91 Bravo combat medic, and without thinking about it, I said yes. I never considered anything else because that job just felt like it was where I was meant to be. And I finished all my training by July of 2001. In July of 2004, we were in Iraq. By October of 2004, we were in Ramadi, Iraq, in the Al-Anbar province. We were out on a weapons cache sweep in a graveyard, the 44th Engineering Battalion. The intel the day before had said to expect activity, and the day went by without incident, but on our way back to the FOB, stands for Forward Operating Base, by the way, a vehicle towards the end of our convoy was hit by a massive IED that sent Humvee into an instant fireball. Sorry. Since we were the medics, our tracked vehicle, which is a mini 113, it's a 113, but it's like a mini tank, pivoted around and went back to get the casualties. The first soldier was brought in screaming and placed on my litter. His name was Specialist Watson. He had been in the turret when the IED exploded. It ejected him from the turret, the steel vehicle catching him at his knees. Each leg had compound fractures just below the knee, and bright red blood was spurting into the air. It was filling up the inside of our vehicles so that our boots were sloshing around in it. Trying to put tourniquets on both his legs was slow because he was screaming and grabbing me in fits of pain and terror while we were moving through rough, bumpy roads at high speed, trying to get back to the fob as fast as we could. Sergeant Washington actually walked into the tracked vehicle because adrenaline does really funny things to people sometimes. But he had been a dark black man before the explosion. The person that walked in was white. His uniform and his color had been completely burned away. The only part of his body that had not been burned was his feet because he still had his combat boots on. He died in January of 2005 after succumbing to his injuries and lingering for months. PFC Barbarette had also been in the Humvee, and when it went up in flames, he'd been able to get out of the truck, but not before everything was on fire because the 50 cal had gone up in flames with Humvee. The rounds started exploding, making it impossible for anybody to get to him while he burned alive on the road. It took him 7 minutes to stop moving. Staff Sergeant Hawkins never left the Humvee, and there was nothing anybody could do for him. That same day, my friend, Specialist Beard from 217 Artillery, who had spent many hours playing spades with me in our free time, was killed by a sniper. I had noticed I wasn't running into him anymore, and I didn't think anything of it because it wasn't uncommon for schedules to change. And then I asked a mutual friend where he was. He was killed on that day, the 44th, that lost all those people. He replied, having no idea I had been the medic for that mission. You didn't speak of the dead after they were gone, and so nobody had talked about Beard at all. And I think that for all of us, we knew that it could easily have been any of us, and it wouldn't do any good for any of us to lose our minds if we lost our life because we still had a job to do and no way to go home. In November of 2004, November was a very busy month, by the way. We were out on mission on our way back to the fob. I was riding in the back of our 113. The troop hatch in the back was open because we were set up as an ambulance. We didn't have a turret with a large gun. That's against Geneva Convention. So I was pulling guard in the back of my M16 over a layer of sandbags for some cover. The road we were going back was lined with a thick crowd of children who were all out waving at us as we were passing by. I remember thinking to myself how nice it was, because if you know me, you know how much I love kids. I made eye contact with a small child in front with large brown eyes. And as I started to wave back, I was thrown backwards, the M16 broke from my hands, dirt and rocks hitting me in the face, and everything went black. I never heard the explosion. The next thing I remember, I'm being picked up on my flat vest by our first sergeant, who was shaking me and yelling my name. I told him I was fine, and that was that. I stood back up, just in time to see us rolling through the gates of our fob. Once we stopped and parked in the fob, the commander asked the first sergeant if we should go back and assist with casualties, and they decided that we wouldn't. I had been the medic for that mission, and I was barely standing. I can't tell you how many children died that day from the crowd. In that crowd, but imagine setting off an IED in the middle of a Saturday afternoon in the Minnesota State Fair, and everybody standing shoulder to shoulder. How many people would have died? Because that's what happened. And all I know for sure is the vehicle that saw everything happen from behind, that was behind us. So it just decimated the crowd. There was nobody left. It was gone. I don't have names for any of them, but out of all the memories, this one is the hardest for me to deal with. Because every time it gets quiet, I just see those large brown eyes. But I know that she died that day, as every other child that was in that group, meant to kill every vehicle in my vehicle, or meant to kill everybody that was in my vehicle, which failed. Later in November, of course, still in November, I was on shift at Area Station Romani with incoming casualties, was announced on the radio. We went out to the smoke pit to change smoke, because that's what we did for free time, besides space. We did that too. And soon an Abrams tank pulled in, and then but pivoted and parked instead of allowing us to unload casualties. The driver jumped out and walked inside, while myself and another medic crawled up the Abrams. There was an eerie silence as we started yelling to the guy in the turret. He'd fallen down into the gunner's seat and slipped into his flak vest and was limp, making it difficult to get to him. Eventually I noticed there was blood on everything, but we kept working and talking and hoping that there was something left to say. That was the drive that always just kept us going day after day was the hope. The next guy, we're gonna save the next guy. When we finally cut the straps of his flak vest and got that off, and his head rocked backwards, and despite everything that I had already seen in the short time that we'd been there, I gasped. He'd been hit in the face with an RPG, and it was empty where his face had previously been. Our mission to save the soldier turned into recovering a body. And there were no words spoken between us once we saw his face. We just knew what to do next. He was 21 and had just gotten married. After his body had been recovered, I went out front, and my NCO was sitting on the steps, still chain smoking. I sat down and pulled out my own pack of smokes, neither of us saying anything, because there was nothing left to say and nobody talked about it together. In March 2005, I left for R&R, it stands for Rest and Relaxation. One of the last people I saw before I left was Specialist Tywin, from 19th Infantry, who punched me in the flak vest, saying, "You're ready for war now," while he growled and goofed off. We were trying to drop off an Iraqi civilian who had been hurt in a car accident. I was so terrified being seen with U.S. Army soldiers that he would not leave our ambulance, because being viewed as an American sympathizer was a death sentence in Ramadi. A few days after I left for R&R's, Humvee was hit by an IED so big that there was nothing left to recover the lower half of the gunner. Corporal McGowan, Specialist Twyman, Staff Sergeant Hoskins, all killed instantly. One of our docs, Captain Grimes, who'd been in the backseat of the Humvee, was brought to the aid station. But every single one of his bones had been shattered, and there was nothing left to save. Whenever we took casualties under fog, we'd go into combat blackout. There was a way of ensuring that soldiers' families who were killed or injured had a way of being properly notified by the Army. Because I was on R&R when this happened, nobody could send me an email or make a phone call to warn me. I found out on Fox News, sitting in my parents' living room back in the States, that 4 of our guys had been killed. And nobody knew what that meant but me. In Ramadi, these stories happened every day. Every day, we sustained casualties until we went back to the United States after our 12-month deployment was done. My brigade, 2nd Renegade Combat Team, 2nd Infantry Division, held for a long time the record of soldiers lost in single deployment. We might have held the record for the entirety of the war, but really I quit paying attention to my own sanity. And then I decided to re-enlist. I knew that we were slotted to go back to Iraq, but even after 12 months were over, part of me had never come home, so deciding to go back was easy. I was still a medic, and part of being a medic is knowing that you have the skills to do a job that people need, and if I didn't, then some poor fellow who had no idea that he was getting into would have had to have gone in my place. And so I did what any good medic would do, and I made sure that I was there. In 2006, just a year after we'd come home from Ramadi, I went back to Iraq. My unit was assigned to Camp Restamai in southern Baghdad. This time my mission was different. Assigned to a security platoon, we took convoys of supplies from one base to another. We pulled regular Kurev shifts, but kind of something. That stands for Quick Reaction Force. In November 2006, we got alerted to go help and assist in the recovery. A team had been hit in the city. My battalion commander pulled me aside on the way out and told me they couldn't find the head of one of the soldiers and asked if I was going to be okay. I told him that I would be fine and left. The warfare had changed from my previous deployment. IEDs were still used with roadside bombs in Baghdad, but very different. Baghdad had a factory that made copper discs that were used to punch through bedrock while drilling for oil. These copper discs, when a charge was put behind them, could be exploded using infrared devices that were triggered by the heat of the Humvee engine. These new bombs, called EFPs, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what this acronym stands for, you're going to have to Google it. Were multiple charges that would be pointed to hit a vehicle, with each disc producing a copper torpedo that could punch through the upper armor of our vehicles. This vehicle had been hit by one of those, and not only had it punched through the back steel door on the side the EFP was on, but it blew completely through the vehicle and out the other side, leaving a splattering of flesh and blood in an array about 8 feet wide. Our job was to recover the bodies, but when the charges went through the truck, we also went through the abdomen of the gunner and bounced around inside the truck, hitting everybody. The force was so powerful that there were skin and bones embedded into the Kevlar walls of the Humvee. We realized fairly quickly that we were not going to be able to recover the bodies individually, so then our job became to find the dog tags. We never found the dog tags, but we did find their fingers with their wedding may say that I never knew who was who, but just in that vehicle that day, 3 men died. Sergeant Gibson and Specialist Ford, PFC Murphy. They're part of a unit from Alaska that had been in the process of redeploying back to the States when the surge in Baghdad was announced. Some of them were already home when they were given orders to get back on the plane and go back to Baghdad. That was who died that day. The United States has not been in a war, as you heard a whole bunch of other people already say, but it's already written down, sorry, I'm just gonna make it. The United States has not been in a war declared by Congress since World War II, and then that generation is almost completely gone. Korea, Vietnam, First Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, none of these wars were wars at all, but prolonged military conflicts. Over 7,000 military members died in Iraq and Afghanistan, another 50,000 injured. In Iraq, because our system is so proficient, we could get people who were severely wounded on off the battlefield back to the rear, making them more likely to live through massive injuries that would have been a death sentence in any other conflict. People with double amputations, sucking chest wounds, massive burns, gunshots. It all made them more likely to survive because we had mastered the art of medicine and war. The U.S. Army is the most proficient machine in the world. We were ready to deploy at any given moment's notice. Everything was already packed, our training was already happening, and the nature of the job, and then once you were in, there was no leaving until your enlistment was done. Even then, they had the discretion to involuntarily extend you. To prop that up, American culture and propaganda machine idolizes the military as heroes. So to join is a way to be somebody important, to work a job of prestige. And I remember that thinking that that's what I was doing too. Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. These are the pillars of what it means to be a soldier. They are driven into you from the first day of training, and even once you leave, they stay with you. These character traits which are completely missing in American politics today. In the United States government, we have the insidious force at play that uses the corporate media as a propaganda machine to feed off violent human instincts and a complacent people. This giant never sleeps, it doesn't pause, it doesn't think, it just feeds off the need for power, and its greed is insatiable. And I'm talking about the military-industrial complex. A conglomerate of corporations that have either infiltrated the government at every turn to keep the war machine alive and running, or the government helped create the corporations to keep producing the tools it needs to support the constant and long-term warfare to promote American imperialism. And I see it for what it is now, an advantage that I didn't have when I was a young soldier, when the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were both in their infancy. Today we have the advantage of history and being able to look back at what happened. My journey, trying to come to terms with why, led me to where I am today. And you've heard a lot of people ask why. I ask myself those same questions. Why? For what? Don't tell me it was to keep Americans safe. We weren't at war in Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Did the country have issues? Was Saddam a terrible maniacal tyrant? Yes. But were the Iraqis better off without Americans in their country? 150,000 Iraqis might tell you that they were not. In 2014, ISIS took control of key parts of Iraq, and the areas that I'd spent compensating for my experiences began a downward spiral that I almost never came out of. The question of why it became a hurdle I could not overcome without admitting what the reality was for myself. And to answer why we were there, I had to be honest with myself. And if I had been in their places with a foreign country invading my homeland, I might have picked up arms and become the insurgency too. We were there to keep the war going. We were used as sacrificial lambs invaded in the blood of our fellow soldiers to prop up the corporate interests of might. Those I'd sworn to join. The one that started with, I, Rebecca Whiting, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to do the same. This oath was used as a weapon against us for unconstitutional wars and illegal activities. But because it was the President of the United States, his cabinet, and the entirety of Congress, and the judicial system who were either working with the might or ambivalent about its activities, there was nobody that had the ability to stand up against it to keep from happening what did happen. The people that died mattered, not just the U.S. soldiers, but the people in Iraq suffered. My husband Keith, who is here with me today, was part of the 1st 506th Infantry in Alabar province during the same deployments. While out on patrol one day, an IED exploded, and because of the explosion, the natural reaction of people in the area was to flee. One of the cars that had been driving near took off, trying to get away. but because the intensity of what just happened, the fear and the weariness of battle, and really the longevity of the deployment, the car was shot up by one of the tanks. It rolled to a stop, and as Keith and his crew pulled up in their Humvee, a bystander had already started pulling the 4 children out of the back seat, the father already dead in the front seat. Why, the bystander cried as he held up the dead children. Why? Why? That's a question that haunts every veteran of the war on terrorism today. And I'll tell you why. Men, rich and powerful, that are capitalizing off the United States' abuse of the military oaths of enlistment, the cowardice and corruption of the political oligarchy draws no distinction between people it destroys or who they matter to or degree in the wake of bloodshed. They don't care about you or me or our children or our families. As long as the war continues, they are satisfied, no matter what the cost, that we alone get to bear. I said if you had patience with me, I was going to try to get through all my stories, so thank you for sticking it out. I wasn't sure if I was going to actually be able to do that. Up until a couple of years ago, I didn't talk about this at all. The emotional aftermath was always too great. 22 veterans a day are dying of suicide. That number has been often disputed as a desperately slow statistic. John Wade, a fellow veteran and friend, who suffered through both deployments Keith and I were also on, and one of Keith's soldiers, who also went back for a 3rd deployment to Afghanistan after we left the unit, was posting pictures of himself with a kid, sitting in the front pocket in a pair of oversized overalls he was wearing. He was a mountain of a man, figuratively and literally. He was one of the tallest men in my husband's platoon and towered over everyone. His personality was huge. His heart was huge, and he was the kind of person you would rely on. 3 days later, he was dead. Luther was due to get married. He was a reliable soldier, a good friend. It didn't seem like any of the things that we'd gone through were getting to him. Then he was found dead in his home. He died of organ failure from drinking. He hadn't told anybody about Iraq. He just drank himself to death to cover up the pain. And these are just 2 people, but they are far from the only 2. For the people left behind, those of us that also served, it's a painful reminder that it only takes once to not be able to beat back the demons to lose everything. And I can't do nothing about this. I won't lose anyone else without saying that I'm not also doing something to make this insanity stop. This isn't a matter of politics for me. I am not who I ever want to be. I want to live in peace and raise my family. The reality is the politicians and the politics are what caused this problem. Being uninvolved will ensure that they are free to keep doing what they are doing. The Democrats won't help, the Republicans won't help. Together they started the war in Iraq, and together they kept it funded. The 2-party system is a sham. They rely on to keep people too fearful of the opposition, to keep rationalizing their vote for the lesser of 2 evils. And I'm here to tell you that it is time to stop settling. Let it be a hallmark of generations behind us that did not have the courage or the tenacity to confront what their country was doing and demanding difference, because I can't do nothing. I joined the Libertarian Party of Minnesota as a way to combat the 2-party system, and I am here in support of the Defend the Guard legislation. A bill that would cut off the head of the mic, or at least one of them, to keep it from abusing the oath of enlistment of the Minnesota National Guard. The National Guards were a vital asset to keep the wars going, and to limit them would be used only in wars that have a declared congressional you know what I'm trying to say. Put a major hurdle in the way of the mic to stop the forever wars. There are multiple states all pursuing the Defend the Guard legislation, and they're relying on us to ensure that we are doing our part here in Minnesota. There is no opportunity in today's day and age to sit out and watch from the sidelines. Today, we are calling on the Minnesota legislatures to stop acting like cowards and playing war games with other people's lives from behind the comfort and safety of their own desks, and to have courage to simply sign the bill that would protect Minnesotan sacrifices that serve in the National Guard to be used responsibly and only when absolutely necessary, because the actual defense of the United States and the state of Minnesota needs them, not because Boeing has jets, missiles, and rockets they need to sell, and because politicians like to play jump rope between their places on the mighty corporate boards and their political careers. Yeah, I'm talking about people like Nikki Haley. I'm sure you quote that accurately. I mentioned earlier that I'm a mom of a large family. I'm heavily invested in the future generations and the issues that will be a hallmark of their lifetime, or of their time. So let it not be war, but peace. And now that I know the answer to the question why, I know what has to happen next, we start chipping away at the mic one by one until we have taken it down to a small sniveling nothing, where it's regarded as nothing more than enemy of the world in the history books. How far do you think I'd go for the truth, knowing how far I've already come? I told you why. Now what are we going to do about it? When Amy Klobuchar ran for U.S. Senate for the first time, she ran on criticism of the Iraq War and then voted lockstep with all the other Democrats to keep funding the wars that she got rich in D.C., like the good Democrat she is. While she was in D.C., I was in Iraq, dealing with the consequences of their decisions. While they were using us as the pawns to fund their corporate interests, a friend, period. Well, their interest, period. Sorry, I'm getting kind of...
Doing great.
A friend just asked me recently when it was that I knew I was past Iraq, and I think people misunderstand. I never did, I never can, I never will. Nobody does. It is too late for me, too late for so many of us. And the only way to get through this is to see it to its conclusion. That conclusion can only be one thing. So, Amy Klobuchar, I'm here to announce that I am coming, because you are the first in a long line of war pigs that are past their prime. I'm going to seek the Libertarian endorsement for U.S. Senate seat, and I will not stop until you fail. Then I'm going for the next tyrant and the next, until every single one of you that would take advantage of soldiers' patriotism for your own evil purposes have zero credibility left to keep going. And this terrible chapter in American history is closed because no one, again, would ever consider abusing the military to make rich men richer, much less consider being their puppet in office. I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that oath was written in the blood they spilled. So help me God.
For the love of God, I do not know why she was nervous. It was inspiring. I want everybody to just freeze where you are right now, and I want you to look around this building. Silence for a minute. Look at the center of this rotunda real quick. Roped off. How dare you walk on that star? And then look around the top of this rotunda. These arches, these soaring arches, a soaring rotunda. And the noise. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I know on my stream someone chatted, what's all the background noise? I think it's a really good question. What's all that background noise? What's all the noise? Every day, all day long, when you turn on the radio, if anybody listens to the radio, turn on your TV, turn on your local news, cable news network. What's all the damn noise all the time? War, 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 war. And everybody just chatters. Nobody pays attention. And this building, as ornate as it is and as beautiful as it is, should be a hallmark of the liberties and the freedom and about the sacrifices. We see it in this room. If you ever get a chance and you're from Minnesota, you make your trip here and look at this rotunda. It is a shrine to the military history of Minnesota guardsmen and militias. And yet next to no one who fills these halls on a daily basis had enough moxie to give a damn enough to be here today. Except for, of course, esteemed Senator Weaver. And then we wake up and we wonder, where did all our youth go? Why are so many veterans killing themselves? Could it be because we're sending them a message that they don't matter anymore? I know they matter to everybody here, and the vast majority of the people that are watching on the different platforms, but does the veteran that lives across the street from you know that? Does the family of the guardsmen who got shipped off for the 14th time, do they know? I said at the beginning, I'm not even worthy to carry out the trash for the veterans in this room. I've heard Rebecca's story. I know Garrett's story. I know Bob's story. I've heard TJ's referenced his. I never pushed Charlie on his when I had him on my show, but I'm not ashamed of that. Bo and I have talked numerous times. But the vast majority of people in this country are not worthy to carry the trash out for even the supply clerk. Because at the end of the day, every single person in the military is an infantryman. And you never know when you're going to be called on or shot at. I'm going to read the Army Soldier's Creed. This can apply to every single person in the military. I am an American soldier. I'm a warrior and a member of the team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined physically and mentally, tough, trained, proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. I am an expert and I am a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I'm a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I am an American soldier. Who's protecting them? You want to protect your soldiers? You want to protect your veterans? I'm going to say something sacrosanct. Not so sacrosanct ability anymore. Get off your asses and get involved. I will be working very closely with Bull and the folks at the Constitutional Republic Party and the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. We will be organizing training if we can put a team together through Defend the Guard and bring our troops home. The guys over there will fly out, set up and organize activism training. And when they are done with you, you will feel like you have been through boot camp or basic training or whatever the Air Force calls it now. Daycare? Okay. I'm a vet, I can help myself. You will feel like you have been through the ringer because you will have walked out after an 8-hour day prepared to fight. Prepared for the activism. And that's why they're making progress. It's time to end corporate warfare.
time to defend our soldiers. It's time that Minnesota defends the Guard.
Please clean up after yourself. Thanks, TC. So you have more stuff Oh, okay. Oh, it's not why did you have it? I just kind of didn't thinking. Oh, it's not environment. The email that you sent, I put it to me, but I didn't plan on it when I came here, but I was like, yes. So I wrote something up for that. Yeah. I'm with yeah. So you came down with yeah. But also, there's nobody on the left here, right? No. TFL, but sorry. No, hey, it's all good. Next time. I'm sure you're going to be doing a bunch of these, right?
At least one a year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ramsey and TC.
Absolutely. For representing the reasonable side of the left.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we do that. We like to branch out a little bit more than just
The North Star. There's a whole big gap. Yeah, a couple of years ago, but somebody, they had an event here in the Philbrook office, and they come in the middle and was working on it.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you would, please go and share it out. And if there's stuff you want to clip, we'd love to have you clip it. Bring this to your state, to your region. Talk to people. If you have any questions, reach out to me, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it and put you in touch with people who know even more than I do. So, as always, until next time, see if I can get my clothes right. It's been a while. Fight for your freedom is yours. Fight for your liberty, it belongs to you. And Sic Semper, Tyrannis.